I started at Chenal in 2014. I think Kentucky had a really good basketball year. That's kind of how I remember it. 14, 15 basketball season. Judah was also born that year. That would probably be the bigger and more important thing versus a 38-1 basketball season. But I started here. It was a great process to be here. And when I arrived at Chenal, I was welcomed with open arms. And I remember that the elders said, hey, we want to give you a gift. You're starting here. We know that you're excited. We're excited to have you. We want you to know that by starting here, you get this thing. This is, since 2014, has been the thorn in my side. The elders, I remember them telling me, hey, we've got a church bus for you to take kids on trips. And thinking, because I was from a church where we had to rent from Enterprise all the time, I thought this will be awesome. No one will have to drive me to the Enterprise. I'll just go to the parking lot, crank that baby. We're going to get ice cream, trips, all that stuff. And then they said, but you have to have a CDL to drive this. Now, I was unaware of what a CDL was before this bus entered my life. And I remember some offhand conversation of just go down to the state police office. It'll be easy. Take the test. Liars. I remember the feeling of shame and humility and humiliation going into the state police office, leaving the state police office after failing that test. If you've ever taken the CDL, and I know there's some people here that have, there's a point where you're just wasting the officer's time, and they'll just stop the test. Midway through, you're like, all right, I know I've missed a few things, but I think I've got this. Nope. They'll just say, and we're done. There is no way you can get the points needed to pass this test. So I, with my tail between my legs, went to an elders meeting. It was when the elders meetings happened in this building here. I go upstairs, and I remember telling them, guys, this is the hardest test that I've ever had to take in my life. Hebrew, Greek, give it to me. This I cannot do. And I don't think they believed me, because I even begged them. I said, can we sell this thing? Let's just get 3 15-passenger buses, anything that people could actually drive. And I remember there was this idea that what we needed to do for Bryce was surround him with a group of men, and that would either encourage me or make me feel worse if they all were able to pass and I failed. And so one day, I think it was a Thursday, we all go down to the state police office on Geyer Springs, proud. These were a proud group of men that went that day. I remember it very vividly. We all go down, we all check in for our reservations. I think JJ forgot his ID or something, so he was gone immediately. But that day, still as I think about it and I reflect on this particular Thursday, was one of my favorite days that I've ever had at this church. Because I went thinking, these men are going to pass this test. I'm going to look like a fool because I was unable to. And I've never felt more on the same level with Craig Lair as I did when I looked through the doors and I could see Craig's head hanging with shame as he was walking with that officer back into the state police office because Craig had failed that exam. The worst part about it, with all of these proud men that went that day, is I think they just failed all of us. They were like, you're all together, this is all really bad, no one is passing this exam today. And all of us left that day failing the CDL exam. Now, we did what all smart people do. We took our talents down to Pine Bluff, where we were able, surprisingly, to pass the test in Pine Bluff. And to this day, I'm still a proud card-carrying CDL driver. But I bring that story up because Craig is here, and I wanted to tell that story. But after that test, our late friend Haley Wilson did something that was really cool. He obviously was one of the sweetest individuals that any of us have ever known. But Haley looked at all of us and said, all of y'all are fools, and you're not taking this seriously. And so if you go to the bus, even right now, behind the driver's seat, Haley Wilson made a packet of everything that you need to do to get prepared to drive that bus. There is no telling how much time that man spent on that thing. But he thought, hey, you need to know all of this information if you're going to drive this bus right. Now, there's so much dust on that back. I'm just kidding. But in all seriousness, he did that because he wanted us to be prepared when we drove the bus. Now, if you've ever been on a road trip, maybe you're somebody that likes to plan ahead. You have everything written out. You have a list of what you need to have in your suitcase, what you need to do for the house before you leave. Or maybe you're one of those terrible people that just says, let's just go. No, thank you. But a lot of us make these lists. And what I want to talk about this morning is essentially Paul's preparation list to become the individual that we know who Paul is later on in the New Testament. And there's this beautiful part about Paul's life that is outside of the canon of Scripture. That's often either overlooked or ignored, but is foundational in developing who Paul was and who Paul ended up becoming later on in Scripture. And to fully understand Paul, we have to understand where Paul is from. Paul is from a city called Tarsus. That's often Saul of Tarsus is where he's from. This city means a lot more to Paul than we realize. And the importance that this has to Paul goes well beyond before Paul was even born or thought of. In fact, the significance of this city to Paul, I believe, really begins with Pompeii. Fun history lesson. Who wanted to do that on Sunday morning? But Pompeii, in 67 BC, looked at Tarsus and said, I really like this city. I want this city to be part of the Roman Empire. And the Tarsians were like, no, thank you. And he said, well, what if you became part of the Roman Empire, but you became a free city? Which meant they could govern themselves, but then they still had all of the amenities and all of the resources and all of the things that were given to Roman citizens. So think about how Paul conducts his ministry later on. Paul is able to travel freely through the world. Not because people are like, y'all, Paul is showing up. Like, that's not why Paul is able to go from one place to another. Paul is able to go from one place to another because he has Roman citizenship, which develops with Pompeii around 67 BC. So even before Paul is born, even before he's thought of, these things are starting to be added to Paul's list, his preparation list, that make him the man that we know who he is. But there's another part of this particular region that's important. It's these mountains here. This mountain range is probably the primary source of commerce during Paul's time. There are a lot of different things that influence the resources that came along with these mountains, but none more importantly than goats. Who thought we were going to talk about goats this morning? I did, because I wrote the sermon. But goats these are found all over these mountain ranges in Tarsus. So if you go and you're looking at these mountain ranges, you're probably going to